stress. Hi folks, thank you for joining us today. I'm going to go through an introduction and a welcoming, kind of while we let folks trickle in. We're anticipating 300 to 400 people joining us live today. All right, hello. Welcome to this digital meeting about farm resilience and COVID-19 in Washington State. This has been organized by a small core team of farmers with the support of Washington Young Farmers Coalition, SnoValley Tilth, WSDA regional markets and food assistance teams, Tilth Alliance, PCC Farmland Trust, LINC Foods, Seattle Neighborhood Farmers Market Association, and our amazing panel of farmers, Bil Thorn, Celeste Monk, Beth Robinette, and Amy Moreno-Sills. Technical support and sponsorship for this event is coming from Roar Mobile Farm Stands and core organizers from People's Hub, who are donating their personal time and service to help us pull this all off. Viva Farms has also stepped forward to provide Spanish translation of panels and key points from today in a written transcript that we'll send later on. If you haven't already, please take a moment to settle in, take some deep breaths. There's a check-in prompt going in the chat window. If you'd like to share with the group your name, your farm name, and one way you're planning to or have been taking care of yourself in these pretty stressful times. I'm going to go ahead and admit a few more folks who are waiting to come in, and we'll keep moving. I'm going to wait until 4:10 and then we'll keep going with the welcome.
No, I know, but
all right, folks. Welcome to the space. If you're just joining us, check out the chat window to introduce yourselves. You'll see the prompt listed on the shared screen that you see in front of you. Welcome to the space. To start the session today, we want to call on each of you to acknowledge the land and water that you work with and what it means to be in right and respectful relationship with the Indigenous peoples in your particular place. Please keep this call to action in your hearts and minds as we engage today and work in community beyond our webinar together. This land acknowledgement was shaped for our event today by several local Indigenous scholars. So thank you to Kristen French and Elizabeth Bragg, who are referencing work by Eve Tuck, and also for giving us a moment to start out today to consider our relationships to land and power. So my name is Beto Vergara. I'm a farmer and a food systems community organizer with Sweet Hollow Farm, the Washington Young Farmers Coalition, and Roar Mobile Farm Stands. I'll be one of 3 facilitators helping us along in this conversation today. In one day of promotions and kind of massive peer-to-peer outreach through our communities, we've had over 500 registrations for this webinar session. So we've been working hard to keep this gathering farmer-led and farmer-centered. This is also an invitation to our communities of service providers and government officials to build space to accept and follow through on farmer leadership. Farmers, we're in this struggle with you. We've got a great mix of producers and food systems folks in attendance today. And to give you a sense of that kind of breakdown, we've got about 2/3 of attendees who are producers, and about 1/3 of our attendees are service providers, government officials, and also folks listening in from out of state. We've also got some international representation in the mix. So welcome to you all, and let's begin. We first off want to thank you for engaging with our really detailed registration form. We know that it was wordy, but the perspective that we were able to gain to kind of collectively address the needs of farmers throughout Washington state is really indispensable to how we can organize and move forward through these uncertain times. Thank you. As our team of organizers has been filtering through the really incredible and thoughtful questions that you all are bringing to this conversation, we really want to acknowledge and honor your honesty and vulnerability, sharing your concerns and also the impacts that you're already experiencing during the present COVID-19 pandemic. Throughout our process of putting this rapid response webinar together, we've been very focused on deep listening, and your voices are ringing through loud and clear. This is certainly a time where many of us are holding on to anxiety and uncertainty, fear, and also pain. In the same moment, we also want to name that the common threads of, farmers being geniuses, who are setting forth to persevere with feeding our communities, while also building innovative and inclusive networks of care and resource distribution. Those things are very clear to us from your responses. The momentum that we're seeing from our communities of producers is telling us that this moment has kind of immense potential to build into a farmer-led movement that has the power to really positively change practices and frameworks of agriculture and food systems in our nation. So we want to be upfront with you all that our team of organizers and our panelists know that we won't be able to answer all the questions or speak to all the themes that have come out of the registration survey or that are coming up, rising up out of our communities. We're all here kind of with the knowledge that we're experiencing very rapidly changing conditions. Our organizers have been working tirelessly to build this container for community discussion, and we're already exploring what next steps look like from here. So, the enormous amount of respect, support, and engagement that we've received shows us that this session is like just the beginning, and please know that there's so much more to come. We're going to go over a brief overview of our agenda today. So after this welcome and introduction, we'll be moving straight into hearing from our panel of farmers. The farmer panel we have slated for about 30 minutes. And immediately after that, we'll move into breakout groups for some farmer-to-farmer conversation. We have 20 minutes scheduled for the breakout groups. And just so you know, those are optional. You'll be hearing a little bit more about that later. After breakout groups, we'll reconvene for the non-producer panel, which we have 30 minutes for as well. And then kind of our last 20 minutes together will be a facilitated question and answer session. We ask that you put questions in the chat window. We'll be pulling from those for that last 20 minutes. And then we'll have a moment to kind of reground and close out. So some notes from back of house. Because of the large number of attendees today, we have moderators who are assisting us all in muting our microphones during this session. So please be mindful of our limited time together. Use the chat window to pose questions as they come up for you. And panelists, please don't worry about answering those questions as you're speaking. We'll be working behind the scenes to select attendee questions, which we'll come back to after both panels have had the chance to share. As we move into hearing about our panels, know that we've had to produce some very simplified questions due to our limited amount of time together today. So we saw three major areas of focus that we've pulled into our conversation about farm resilience during the pandemic. One is going to be planning, market channels, and then also support available for producers. And now I'd like to introduce one of my fellow organizers and facilitators who's calling into our session, Elizabeth Bragg of Long Hearing Farm and the Washington Young Farmers Coalition. Elizabeth, thank you for everything you've done to pull this together. And now I'm going to pass this over to Emma and Ari. Please introduce yourselves.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for being here. I'm Emma. I use she, her pronouns. I'm on the board of the Washington Young Farmers Coalition, And I run Rising Sign Farm, which is a small farm in its first season going in 2020 in the Snoqualmie Valley. Thank you all for being here.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Ari. I am the Farm Services Program Manager at SnoValley Tilth, and I am also a farmer. I run Kamayan Farm, which is fortunately situated right next to Emma.
Lovely. And if you're new and joining us, check out the chat window for doing your own little introduction to our group. We're going to move into Ari facilitating the farmer panel.
Great. Thank you so much. Can everybody hear me okay? Sound good? Okay. So we're going to move into our farmer panel. And we have been combing through all 500 registration responses to try and really distill down what you all are interested in hearing from these farmers. So we came up with these 3 main questions that we're going to ask all 4 of our farmers to respond to. And then we have 1 question per each farmer that we'll ask that's a little bit more tailored to them. So the 3 focus areas that we're asking our farmers to respond to, and you can pick which one of these you're thinking about most in this moment, or if you want to try and cover all 3, you have a few minutes to get to them. So we're asking people, how are you shifting your operations right now, given the current conditions? How are you experiencing and planning for any potential disruptions to either your market channels or your supply chains? And what support do you need from your community or service agencies right now? So we are going to start with Amy Moreno-Sills from 4 Elements Farm in Puyallup. Amy, you're on and you're unmuted. Perfect. So Amy, we're going to give you about 4 minutes to choose how you want to answer those questions. And then I have a specific question for you. And then right after that, we'll speak with Beth Robinette. So Beth, if you're on, be prepared to go next. But Amy, I'll let you have the mic. And if you can just introduce yourself and say what you all grow on your farm as well, that would be great.
Thanks, Ari. So I'm Amy with 4 Elements Farm in Puyallup. We grow about 30 acres of row crop vegetables, primarily for the wholesale market. And we have 6 acres of U-pick blueberries as well. So the first question, how we're shifting our operation with the current conditions. Everything is so new that we're not making any hard, fast decisions right now. Everything is business as usual as far as what day-to-day work looks like. There is a potential to increase production this year. I can see that potential happening, but day-to-day is changing, so we haven't made any shifts whatsoever at this point. The second point for how we're planning for potential disruptions to our market channels or supply chains, the biggest thing that we are concerned about right now are procuring supplies. So those wax boxes that we need for every product, the twist ties, things of that nature. So what we've been doing is we've been getting ourselves into a bit of debt to pre-purchase those products that we need right now, so that we'll have them on hand when things start becoming harvestable, because we're just now doing our first planting, so we don't exactly need them at this time, but we will. And that's one of our main concerns. And we're also thinking about labor issues. We're expecting to have less of them this year than we have had in the past 5 or 6 years. But at this time, everything's up in the air. So, maybe we'll have a lot of folks looking for work, or maybe we won't have work at all. We just have to be flexible like every farmer is every year. The support that we need from our community or service agencies, again, hard to tell, but you know, I think this doesn't change from any other year. I just think we have more of a potential to realize it would be getting the word out about buying from the local farms, from our all different kinds of farms, from, you know, the direct market farms, the wholesale farms, just really being able to prioritize that. I think we're in a good position for that, honestly, right now. So thank you. Ari, did you have a specific question for me?
I do. Sorry, I was just getting myself unmuted. So in the registration responses, a lot of folks are really concerned about food safety in this time and are trying to think through, how do we safely deliver produce to our customers? And I'm just curious, I know you employ a lot of folks, and I'm curious what you all have been thinking about in terms of employing new or different safety protocols and how you've been addressing those concerns.
Yeah, definitely top of mind. You know, at the moment right now, we're only working with 1 or 2 employees, and production is light. We're actually just going to be doing our first delivery later this week. And I was going through that in my mind, and I think what I'm going to do for that is, when I'm, you know, physically delivering the boxes, I'll probably wear a mask. I know that that's a little bit controversial, but I feel like that's good to protect folks that I might be coming into contact with. I don't know, you know, my current situation, no one really knows. And so that's one thing I'm doing. On the personal level, of course, everything has changed from hygiene and hand washing and things that that we all know about now. Thinking about later in the summer when things start picking up and we do have more employees. We usually employ about 8 to 12 folks in the high season. Instead of having that hand washing station only at the restrooms or only at the break areas, we're definitely going to have them set up all around. Even though we do wear gloves to harvest, and anytime we're working with product, and I do anticipate that being an issue as well, being able to procure those supplies. So we're really going to have to up on the hand washing and people having their clothes, and maybe we'll be wearing some kind of protective gear over everyone's clothes that we can wash every day and sanitize and things of that nature. It's to be determined, but those are things that have been going through my head maybe in the past 12 hours. So yeah.
Great, thank you so much. We are going to move on to Beth Robinette. And I just want to remind folks that if you have any questions or comments while we're going through this, feel free to just drop them in the chat function. Okay, so we are going to speak with Beth Robinette now. Beth, can you hear us? Are you on? Okay. Let's get Beth for now. Let's jump to Bil Thorn. Bill, are you there? I'm gonna unmute you. Can you hear us?
Yeah. Can you hear
Okay,
me?
great. Yeah, so go ahead and introduce yourself, and then I know you're on your phone, so can you see these 3 main questions that we're asking?
Yeah, I can see these questions.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
All right. So hi, I'm Bil Thorn. Myself and I, or my wife and I, run Sky Island Farm out in Hump Tulips, Washington, and we grow a diverse array of vegetables pretty intensively on 2 acres right now. And usually we do a mix kind of. We do about 50% of our business is our CSA. We run like a 60% CSA. And then the rest is wholesale to restaurants. We work with some hospitals, schools, things like that. And so what we've decided to do this season with all that's happened is focus more on our CSA. And so we decided, since wholesaling we figured is going to be slow, we reopened our CSA signups, and now we're kind of reaching out to other farms that produce other things that we don't produce. Meat mainly is what we've already started working on, trying to find. And so we're going to try to just offer more products to our CSA members this year, and hopefully that helps us out financially and helps out the community.
Great, thank you. And that's perfect, because our follow-up question for you was, as you're working to expand your CSA, do you have any sort of challenges on the horizon in terms of capacity? Like, are you thinking about having to expand your pack shed space or your delivery vehicles? How are you sort of adjusting to manage that shift?
Well, what we've kind of thought about doing is just adding another delivery day. We're not going to we're not going to get another vehicle or anything like that. We're just going to have another delivery day. In terms of difficulty taking on more capacity as far as the CSA, no, I don't think that it'll be a problem at all, because of the fact that we won't have as much focus on wholesaling. So I think that'll free up some time. And in terms of the signups have actually we've gotten a ton of interest lately from the community, and so we feel like it'll be pretty easy to get as many people as we need, or can as many as we can service this season. So
Great, thank you so much, Bill.
Yeah.
We are going to move on to Celeste Monk. Celeste, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hi.
Great. Hi, Celeste. So go ahead and introduce yourself, let folks know what you grow, and then if you can address those three main questions, that would be great.
Hi, I am Celeste Monk. We farm on 8 acres, intensively on 2, primarily cut flowers. I farm mostly with my partner in North Bellingham on Coast Salish land. And how are we shifting our operations? Well, most of our sales are based on wholesale and events, so retail from the farm. So that's shifting pretty dramatically right now. We're starting to get our first cancellations and postponements, and I'm planning to send an email today saying we'll hold deposits and apply to rescheduled weddings, and that we can hold the balance as a credit or apply to a donation. So we are keeping what we love in cut flowers and what got us started, which is wildflowers, herbs, perennials, native plants, and trees. And then we're culling varieties that don't do another service, right? That aren't medicinal, that aren't edible, that won't work for drying or seeding. We are shifting a bunch of our annual flower production to food as we look at the insecurity of the food system in our specific neighborhood. So we're trying to make connections with our food access points here, like the uber local, and collaborating with a fellow flower farm to sell flowers. Still figuring out what this looks like. We are cutting back on blush and white. I see this as an opportunity to push back on the whitewashing and heteronormativity on the wedding industry, and hopefully push for a floral industry that centers the land, farmers, and florists then after, instead of top-down directives from magazines. We sell a lot through our co-op, and they are working on grocery sales and just moved to an online sales model, so I'm hopeful that that will open to the public soon. I have shifted my hiring plans. I was planning on hiring 3 people. I'm hiring one. Financial hit, especially because flowers are higher value. And we're trying to localize our supply chains as much as possible, order soil mix and buckle down, I guess. I am excited about collaborations between farmers and with the neighborhood.
Celeste, you have 1 minute, just jumping in.
Okay, sorry. Things that I need from my community and service agencies, setting up online marketplaces and marketing, increasing community distribution and storage capacity, a simplified regulatory environment, assistance in creating partnerships between farms and schools, B Corps, and other institutions, disaster relief grants, rent and mortgage moratorium, and universal health care.
Thanks, Celeste, you nailed it. You answered all of our additional questions for you. I'm gonna give it just a few seconds to see if anybody wants to throw out a question in the group chat for Celeste. And then we will go back to Beth.
Hey, Ari, I saw a question come in the chat from Samantha from Organic Farm School in Whidbey. Is there still a demand from your local grocery stores if you've sold to them in the past?
I have sold to local grocery in the past. I know there's still local demand and that flower farmers across the country are still selling out on local delivery bouquets. I sell grocery through the co-op, so I will check in with them and try to let this group know what's happening on the larger scale.
Great, thank you so much, Celeste.
Thanks.
We are gonna see if Beth is on the line. Beth, are you there?
I'm going to go ahead and try to unmute Beth. All right, Beth, can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear
Great.
me?
Yes, we can.
Oh,
Thanks. Beth.
finally. I'm so sorry. I don't know. All right. I'm Beth Robinette. I operate the Lazy R Ranch with my dad just west of Spokane, and we raise grass-fed beef and lamb. Sorry, I just hiked it back to my car in case I had to like make a run for better internet somewhere, so I'm a little out of breath. But in terms of how we're looking at adapting our operations, I mean, you know, we're an established multi-generation family farm, so I recognize that we have a ton of privilege in that, you know, we are a lot more stable. So my heart really goes out to those of you who, you know, are in that first generation position, and please let me know how I can support. But our family ranch was really founded in the midst of the Depression, and we basically operated with a Depression era mentality for the last 80 some years. So in a lot of ways, I think we have been preparing for this moment for a long time. You know, I think meat is something that people are stocking up on, and most of our business is centered around custom beef, so like households and quarters. So I've been trying to, I guess, position myself in a non-predatory way, but really encouraging our customers to make sure that they're stocked up on product. And I'm looking at more retail stuff in the meantime, so we don't really have product to harvest until July. But looking at possibly selling more beef by the cut as people are just looking to kind of fill the freezer and be able to hunker down for a while. In terms of supply chain disruption, I mean, we run a really minimal input operation. I buy hay from my next door neighbor, and we don't feed any other supplemental feed beyond a mineral supplement. So we buy that by the pallet. I'm well stocked on that.
You have 1 minute, Beth. Thank you.
Sure. I'm really most concerned about is my butcher that I work with is a 2-person operation. So if anything happens there, that's kind of like the linchpin for my entire sales for the year. So definitely just hoping that they stay healthy and well. And if that doesn't work out, I'm not quite sure what I'll do. Still working on that part of the contingency. Yeah, and then as far as what we need from representatives or agency folks, I mean, I think I personally am doing good, but I think on behalf of there's just so much uncertainty for folks that engage in direct marketing right now, especially those who sell to institutions and restaurants. So we really need to make sure that that those businesses land on their feet when it's all over.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Beth. You answered our question that we had for you, so we're gonna shoot it out to the audience again and see if we can get a question for you. Are your sales direct to consumer?
Yeah, primarily they are. I have one institutional customer that I work with, which thankfully they took delivery of beef last week, and so that's paid for. So I'm very grateful that that happened then and not now. But yeah, primarily we are focused direct to consumer, which I think is going to be really valuable. One other resource I wanted to throw out to people is that Graze Cart, which I haven't used before, but they're an online marketplace / website company for folks that sell and ship meat, and they're offering a free pass for their 60-day course on how to ship meat direct to consumer. So I can send the information out on that after this call.
That would be great. And then I'm going to sneak in one more question. There's actually a couple folks that are asking about the Depression era mentality that your family farm has. And are there any sort of useful lessons from that mentality that you're drawing upon right now?
I mean, I think that the biggest thing is that we have just been so averse to having any kind of debt on our ranch, which I recognize is way easier when you bought land or rented and then bought land in the 30s and 50s than now. But we just reuse, recycle everything. There's not a vehicle on the place that's newer than 25 years old. The tractor's the same age that I am. So, we just really try to be extremely conservative in our financial planning. And we don't ever throw anything away. I'm looking at a pile of junk that usually drives me nuts. That's all of the used things my family has cast off for the last 80 years. That's just in a heap on the back of the property. But you never know when you're going to fix the old Merc up and need to take it for a spin.
Awesome. Thank you, Beth. And thank you everybody for your questions. We are going to shift now into doing a farmer to farmer breakout discussion. So I know that there are a lot of additional questions that didn't get answered, and we're going to give you all some time to talk to each other. And I'm going to hand it over to Emma and Jess to let you know how that's going to work.
Thanks, Ari, and thanks to all our panelists. Yeah, I'm seeing so many great questions and ideas coming in through the chat, and we really hope that this next section where we break out into groups will allow you all to connect with each other, share your concerns, share resources, come up with ideas, those kinds of things. And this is really about farmers connecting with farmers to figure out how we can support each other. So we are going to break out into chats, which Jess will tell you more about. And as many of you know, there are a lot of service providers on this call, and we just want to encourage you when you join a chat to take this as a moment of listening and learning from the farmers and hear what they have to say and what they need from you. And all of the information that's generated from the chat, we will be collecting and then sharing out as a collective resource as we move forward. So Jess, I'll let you take it from here about the technology of this section.
Great, thank you, Emma. So you all are gonna get a chance to chat with folks for what, 20 minutes? Is that right, Emma? Great. So, and I see we've got some new people joining. So Vince, you just joined, welcome. We're about to go into breakout groups. What's gonna happen is if you're on the computer, a little box is gonna pop up inviting you to join breakout group number blank. We've got a ton of folks on with us today. We've got almost 250 people on today, which is so amazing. So bear with us. And basically, you'll be transported into a breakout room when you click that button. Please do click join unless you really don't want to. And if you're on the phone, you're going to be automatically transported into a breakout room. So when you get in there, make sure to just introduce yourselves. We've got these questions for you. How are you or your farm community shifting your plans in the current conditions? What resources or information do you need in this moment? And what do you need for your well-being? And we're going to send these questions out again. Don't worry if you forget them. And then we're also going to invite you to take some notes in the slides. And Dante is going to go ahead and share an editable link. We're going to be using some Google Slides, basically like a virtual big piece of paper for us. So go ahead and find the slide for your group, starting at slide 14. There's going to be 30 groups. So just scroll down until you find the one that matches the number of your group and designate someone to take some notes for you. At the end of the time, we're going to get a little box that pops up that says you have 1 minute left, and you can either click to rejoin the main session at that point or wait until it automatically brings you back. And if you have any questions, feel free to just hit the need help button inside your breakout group. All right, let's do it. Dante, do you have that link for folks to use?
There you go. I just sent it out to everybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. I'm going to go ahead and open all the rooms. And we're here for support if anything gets sticky. See you all soon.
We're going to have Emma move into our second panel here in just a few. It's good to talk to you all.
And as folks are coming back, welcome back. Please remember to mute yourself again, and you might need to reopen the chat box. And as you're rejoining us, just share in the chat with us what themes came up during your conversations. I'll pass it to Emma.
Yeah, thank you all for breaking out to little chat rooms. That was fun. I'm seeing a lot of great questions come up here around farmers markets. How do we open farmers markets back up across the state? How do we keep food safe? Can we do collaborative and combined CSAs? Some frustration around Google Slides, so thank you for recognizing that. I hope that we'll be able to still aggregate all your notes somehow. Questions about how to keep staff safe while working on the farm, that came up a lot in the discussion I was in as well. So we're going to collect all of these questions and aggregate them so that we can try to address some of them today and then address them further moving forward as we continue to organize with each other. Thank you all so much for sharing. So I want to now turn it over to our service providers panel, which we're really grateful to have some of their institutional knowledge here. And this is a time for updates from these non-farm organizations and agencies to give a state of their food systems from their food systems perspective and the impacts on their organizations. So we are going to jump right in and start with Jennifer from the Neighborhood Farmers Markets here in Seattle. She's the executive director, and I asked her this question as we aggregated these questions from all of your responses, and then I'm also planning to be at a farmers market that the Seattle Neighborhood Farmers Markets runs, so this is personal as well. So Jennifer, our question for you is, the closure of farmers markets is having a huge impact on farmers already, and as we plan our seasons. There is a frustration that farmers markets aren't being treated as essential food outlets like grocery stores. Can you speak to that decision to close them and to what work is being done to mitigate the financial impact on farmers?
Yeah, that is the question. And I will just start by saying thanks for including me in this and the opportunity to share this time with everyone. and to say, I share your frustration. I can talk a little bit about the first part of that question, and say that we as an organization had been working through the city and the King County Public Health Department all throughout the week, last week, and prior to that, doing due diligence around our attendance numbers and safe operating plans, and the advocacy work to make sure that markets were recognized as essential food outlets, and had been on a successful path up until Thursday night, when the decision came out from the mayor's office that, in hindsight, I think what likely happened is that farmers markets are situated in terms of policy language in the city of Seattle as temporary events. We are not this or that in a lot of policy language, and I think this situation highlights some loopholes that we have to work to close in the medium term after we get through this initial phase together. In other states, that's not the case. And for California, for example, who has statewide certification over what it means to be a farmer's market and defines that in policy, they are open right now, and they are operating, and they are working through how to do that safely in terms of the risk to staff and to public. So we've been closely following that, and it's really frustrating to be in this position. The second part of this question was the sort of mitigating the financial impact to farmers. We right now have about 140 vendors in the markets, and about 75 of those are farm-based. So we have sent out a survey yesterday to help gauge the immediate impact to those people and those businesses and what their immediate needs are. So that's one thing that we're doing just to get a sense of the landscape out there. We've been on the phone and talking to people directly a lot. And in the short term, also just connecting farms to other sales opportunities, whether that's a drop point and taking pre-orders, wholesale purchasing, people supplementing CSAs, or or promotion of what people have been able to pivot and do, but that doesn't catch everyone. And so our priorities right now are kind of twofold. One is to work with government to safely reopen permitted, regulated markets. A big memo went into the city yesterday, and we're hoping to turn that into a public sign-on letter for the local food community to really help channel these voices and the impact that it's having on the community at large. And this includes the shopping community too. We're just hearing endless feedback coming in the front door. Poor Janet is like fielding things, but I think that should hearten you as it does me. There is power in our voices together. And so look today and not today, tomorrow, for a public sign-on letter. The second thing we're doing is organizing immediately around emergency relief funding. So fundraising, we have a mechanism called the Good Farmer Fund that has a set of criteria that's really been around weather-related disaster. We know we need to reshape that for this situation and figure out a way to fundraise to provide a stopgap for farms, especially the ones that are not connected in ways that others are, or can't pivot their operation to implement something like door-to-door delivery overnight. So I'll leave it at that, and you probably have other questions. I'm happy to share.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. That's super helpful to hear what you're doing, and how farmers might be able to access some financial support, and how we can also hopefully take action to change those regulations that markets can open soon. So I'm sure we'll be able to share out some of those resources later. I want to go over to Laura, who is going to share from the WSDA Regional Markets Program. And Laura, can you tell us about regulations that are currently shifting, or are there regulations that you are anticipating shifting to make less formal distribution possible?
Hi, everyone. This is Laura. Thank you for having me here. I should say I'm Laura Raymond because it seems every Laura works in food systems, so you know plenty of us. I lead the Regional Markets Program at WSDA, which is our Small Farm Direct Marketing Assistance Program and our Farm to School program. So that's a really big question, Emma and everyone, and it's actually one that we work on all the time. And I think one thing that we're seeing that Jennifer pointed out in relation to farmers markets is kind of true across our food system is with this really unprecedented time, some of those gaps or challenges that we've sort of all figured out ways to work around up to this point are becoming more visible. So perhaps there's some opportunity in that. I think what I want to share a little bit right now is not so much specific regulations because I don't know what those are yet. As you all know, regulations are slow moving things, and state, local, and federal agencies right now are in fast emergency response mode. And so if there's one thing that I could communicate that I'm hearing really clearly that I'd like to share with you is that my sense is that there are a lot of people out there who are ready to help, and they're trying to figure out how. There is action happening, obviously, at the local level. You know, the city, the farmers markets are dealing with some of those responses at the state level, and now at the federal level, there are emergency packages being passed. And so, although those still may take a little while to roll out. So what I wanted to do is just kind of, one of the really important things is being able to find good information, I think, while all of these changes are happening. And just like those of us who are trying to figure out where to buy food or where to sell our food, like tomorrow, this is a totally unprecedented experience for us. And similarly, it is a totally unprecedented experience for government agencies to be responding to such a widespread public health concern, and then to have to respond to the economic impacts of the response that we all need to make sure our public health remains safety. So I would say that just we're all in it together, and there is a lot of action happening. So in terms of being able to provide good information, we at Regional Markets are working on a kind of a consolidated information sheet that we hope to have available in like the next day or so. But in the meantime, I want to let people know, and I'll copy these into the chat. There is one really key place for information on the state's COVID response, which includes everything from, you know, the proclamations as they're rolling out, to links to financial and small business support, to information for workers. I just posted it. That's a clearinghouse. The next piece, I just saw the question about the Small Business Stabilization Fund. I don't know about that in particular at this moment, but I can say that all of Washington State has been included in an emergency declaration. And so all counties in Washington State right now are part of the Small Business Association's disaster and economic injury loans. So if you think that your small business is going to be impacted or have economic impacts due to COVID, which obviously is everybody here, you are encouraged to go to the Small Business Association's disaster loan site and apply. And just one, and it's a little bit of a slow process, but if you think you might want one of those loans, they're intended to be operating loans to help with cash flow and keeping staff on, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You want to apply now. And then just fill out the application, then they'll get in touch with you and help maybe in a week or two and figure out the next steps. One just small tip I would share with that right now that we've heard is similarly, they're having to shift that application to apply to this current situation. They're used to dealing with weather or other types of natural disasters. So some of the questions may not quite apply. The key thing is to get your organizational structure right when you apply. So make sure you know if you are a sole proprietorship or if you're a nonprofit or whatever your structure is. I also want to direct people to the ESD. That is where you can go for questions about paid sick leave, paid family medical leave, unemployment, or standby options, either as a worker or as an employer. So I'm including a couple links again in the chat box right now. That is evolving. People are right now, in fact, it may have been announced today, if it hasn't already, that there's flexibility trying to be built in there, for example, to allow a waiver of the usual 1 week waiting time to apply. So I don't want to overwhelm people with just a long list of resources, but those are some sort of critical ones I think for business owners to know about. Do you have more questions for me, Emma, or I want to share one more thing, but I don't want to go over time.
Yeah, feel free to share your next thing.
So I think the one other thing I want to share out is I heard some conversation in my small group about people wanting to be sure that they're taking care of their customers, even as they're shifting and responding to doing business in this environment and best practices. And I think that's good for me to hear. I think we'll try to respond with some more helpful information that way. But in the meantime, King County Public Health, I saw a question, ESD is employment services. King County Public Health has produced a really great sort of process flow for planning for a coronavirus pandemic for business owners. And it really kind of helps walk you through creating a pandemic plan for your business with everything from thinking about employee training to increased sanitation practices to communication with your customers. I think it's a really, really nice resource. So I am including that right there in the chat. And then finally, I think probably the most important thing that I really want to say and ask of all of you is that my whole team is here and our whole agency is behind us asking how we can help and what needs are. And we are being asked on a daily basis by both the governor's office and the emergency response team and legislators both in Washington state and in Washington, D.C. about what are the needs, both immediate, short-term, and longer-term, for you all to successfully respond to the situation and remain viable as businesses. So I would say the more conversations you have amongst yourselves and organized, and as needs emerge, we really want to hear about them. And those can be in an organized way, like the letter that Jennifer was mentioning, or the memo. I'd love to be CC'd on that kind of stuff. I'd love to be sharing it up. And then on the individual farm and business level, shoot us an email with what you're seeing as a real need. If it's something we can respond to, we're going to try to. We've shifted all of our attention to responding to this situation. But also if it's something I can elevate, that is what we are here trying to do.
Thank you so much, Laura. It's really great to just hear that some big state agencies have our backs, and we will absolutely work on getting together resources to or a needs list to share with you, and we'll encourage everyone here to reach out to you directly as well. Vero, did you want to introduce our next panelists?
Yeah, we'll move on to our next service provider and distributor. And just one note as well, kind of off of what Laura is saying, kind of collectively sourcing needs and resources that we're hoping to see in our communities. Certainly, we take your privacy very seriously. And again, thank you for responding to the registration form. Those of you who have stated that you're willing to share your responses with government agencies, we will be forwarding some of the concerns that you've already voiced and taken time to contribute to the conversation. So that's another way that folks will hear a little bit from everyone who's attended today. Moving on, so we're going to talk again to Beth Robinette, who is a co-founder of Local Inland Northwest Cooperative, otherwise known as LINC Foods, which is a food hub. Beth, can you hear us? And are you unmuted?
Nope.
There you are.
There we go. Now I'm unmuted.
Hey, Beth.
Hello again.
Hello again. So Beth, our question for you from the perspective of LINC and running a food hub is, how has the shutdown affected LINC as a food hub? We heard a little bit about farmers markets, but can you offer some insight into what the wholesale supply chain looks like right now for farmers that you're working with?
Yeah, I mean, we primarily sell to restaurants and institutions. That's basically our business model. So the majority of our customers are closed. There are a few restaurants. We do have one great restaurant partner that has really pivoted to takeout, that has a great community following. So their sales are actually, I think, pretty much the same as they've ever been. So that's like one little bright spot. But we do also run a multi-farm CSA veggie subscription program. So we're just working to pivot as quickly as possible towards that. That's not slated to start until June. So we're figuring out some intermediary ways that people can order online from us directly. It's definitely pretty challenging times, and we are just trying to play out as many scenarios as possible and be prepared for whatever happens. But I think overall our biggest hope is going to be just really focusing on those direct to consumer sales as much as possible. And I have farmers emailing me asking me what's going to happen and will farmers markets be open, and I honestly don't know what to tell folks right now. So we're just going to do the best that we can. I guess the hopeful space there is that this could go really, really well, and people could really reconnect to purchasing local product in a more profound way than they've really been focused on it in a long time. So I'm really hopeful that happens and we're able to successfully pivot, but we're definitely preparing for all scenarios.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's great to hear from you and that regional food hubs perspective. So next we'll go ahead and talk to Nicole Garden, who's the Food Assistance Coordinator with the WSDA Food Assistance Program. Nicole, are you on the line and unmuted?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can, yep.
Hi, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. So the question we have for you today is, do you foresee any grants or funds that would allow farmers to sell to food banks or pantries? We know that some funding like that already exists. Some food banks work with forward contracting. But are there ways that we can advocate for emergency funding put towards purchasing from local farmers?
Yeah, so if many of you don't know about our Farm to Food Pantry initiative, it is in a 6-year kind of pilot phase because we have not had sustainable funding for it. So we kind of cobbled the existing funding from our EFAP, our Emergency Food Assistance Program funding. That's a state funded program. And so in the past, the most recent past, it's been about $33,000 that go to about 15 lead hunger relief organizations who manage, who establish contracts, early season contracts with farmers. And we're able to work with an organization called Harvest Against Hunger, who then is able to prepay those organizations so they can establish early season CSA wholesale hybrids type contracts. So $33,000 is not very much, but luckily in this most recent legislative session, we got a budget proviso for $100,000 to go to the initiative. So that would be about $80,000 that would go directly to farmers from that initiative. Originally, our goal was to get that funding for the 2021 growing season, but given the current climate and the economic climate, we're looking to see if we can actually bump those funding up to this growing season. We are not clear on when we're able to use those fundings. We do know as of yesterday, the governor did not sign that yet. So we're looking for that signature. It could have happened today. So when that becomes available, we know for sure that we can shift those funds. We're going to shift most of those funds into this growing season so we can then give you guys a little bit more of a buffer for as far as economics go. So when we find out more, we'll be keeping in touch. So currently, just to give you some idea of where we're located in 21 counties. Actually 20 counties this year. And that would be Asotin, Columbia, Garfield, Walla Walla, Whitman, Clark, Skagit, Island, Ferry, Pomeroy, Stevens, Clallam, Jefferson, Chelan, Yakima, Okanagan, Kitsap, Mason, Spokane, and Grays Harbor County. So ways that we could increase that funding even more so would be letters to the governor, letters to your representatives saying, if you actually have had contracts with some of these lead hunger organizations in the past, maybe giving your perspective and giving feedback on how this is a critical time where we could use additional funding to provide that support, because food pantries right now are in a state of emergency. They're seeing, as of right now, they're seeing about double the amount of clients, at least here on the west side of the mountains, and we expect that to grow. We are anticipating some food from our federal programs, our TFAP program, the Emergency Food Assistance Program, and we're expected to see 4 times the volume. I have one story of 500 clients coming to the food pantry, which was about double to triple the numbers normally. So they are going to need additional food resources. So that is an outlet. Unfortunately, funding for that right now, all their funds are going into getting protective equipment and doing different distribution models that is safe for the food banks and food pantries and the clients themselves. Another opportunity is in the 2018 Farm Bill, there was a provision for a Farm to Food Bank program, not to be confused with Farm to Food Pantry. And in that bill, there's been a lot of questions on what that would look like. We had not received guidance from USDA until last week. It was not a very good time for us at that moment because we were dealing with a lot of emergency services at that point. So we're still trying to evaluate what that will look like. We did have a stakeholder call with farmers and food hunger relief agencies to see how would that best support them. The caveat is it is not for purchasing produce. It is for providing funding for the harvest, transport, processing, and packaging of donated product. So based on our conversations with farmers, it seemed like the best needs there right now is for storage opportunities, or not wax boxes, but those Uniline recycled or plastic boxes, and also just building capacity at the farm level as far as refrigeration capacity and transportation capacity to be able to better serve food pantries. So we are still trying to develop our state plan. Our state plan has to be into USDA by the 31st of this month, which doesn't give us much lead time given the fact that we are now dealing with the emergency situations. But we're going to try our best to make sure that farmers the farmers that we spoke to, that their vision has captured and that we can support you in any way we can. To give you an example of what that would look like, that's about $86,000 just for this current federal fiscal year, and that federal fiscal year will end on September 30th. So we have a very little time to to figure out how we're going to use those funds and how we can best support you and the hunger relief agencies.
Thank you so much. That's super helpful to hear about, Nicole. A couple things I want to draw out just for our audience today. It sounds like there's kind of an action request for farms who have already been able to access some of the funding through forward contracting or through different contracts with food banks, to kind of take a moment of leadership right now and come forward with those stories of success. And another point, it also sounds like some of the funding that you're talking about around infrastructure, packaging, while it sounds like there is kind of a caveat that it's not for the actual produce and the produce would be donated, that sounds like a juicy opportunity for new or emerging farm co-ops that are thinking about rising up in this moment. So thank you for that perspective.
No problem. One thing I do want to say about that, those farms that have experienced contracting with Farm to Food Pantry Initiative with their local hunger relief agency is that we actually, one of my coworkers, Katie Rains, has now appointed to the governor's office to coordinate communication between the governor and the hunger relief needs across the state. So she would be a great person to kind of push those requests up to the governor at this moment. So if you would like to email me those letters, if you do feel so inclined to provide them, I will forward them to her, and she can hopefully put them in the hands of the governor to assess how both, just as the Farm to Food Pantry does, it is mutual support to the hunger relief agencies and to our local farmers.
Thank you so much. Great. Oh, I muted myself. We're going to move into, at this point, a little bit of facilitated questions and answers from the amazing, generative chat room that we have going right now. I think our plan here is to draw out at least one question per non-farmer panel member, and then probably also 1 to 2 questions for the crew of farmers to tackle. And so I'm going to hand that over to Ari and Emma.
Great, thank you so much, Beto. It looks like one question that people have right off the bat for Nicole is, how can farmers make it easier for emergency food programs to buy from them?
That is a great question, and we think about these regional food hubs like LINC, and we actually currently have BMAC, which a few of the people on this call actually work with, and they're trying themselves to be a regional food hub and a food bank, and see how that can support each other. So I think that those are great spots. A one-stop. I know that cuts your bottom line a little bit, but having one place where they can reach out and make sure that they can order things with ease and would be great, because right now they're in the thick of it. So anything that can make it easier as far as online ordering or you reaching out to them themselves. We do have a resource list for the organizations that are participating in the Farm to Food Pantry initiative this year on our website, where you can actually click their name, click their organization name on the map and actually get their contact information. I'd say reaching out to those folks would be a great idea. Yeah, I'd say anything that makes it easy for them and streamlined. Fresh sheets are always great.
Great, thank you so much for that info.
I've seen some questions come up here around food and worker safety, which maybe Laura Raymond, you would be able to address. There's kind of 2 parts around safety. One is, how can we make the food that we're selling more safe in terms of specific actions farmers can take? And then a second question around worker safety, is there any information or guidelines around farmers who are working on farms in close proximity to each other, and how do we create a safe work environment on the farm?
Yes, well, I'm going to caveat this a little bit with the reality that I am not a food safety expert, and that's not my realm of work specifically. But I will say that both the State Department of Health and the county health departments are rolling out information with that kind of guidance. I think in terms of on-farm produce and food safety, depending on what your operation is like, you may already be familiar with the Food Safety Modernization Act, the FSMA Produce Safety Rule. You might be familiar with good agricultural practices and the audits. And those are all based on best practices. And as far the information that I have received to date is that that's the recommendation from the FDA, is to continue following those best practices. Similarly for processed product, good manufacturing practices, and whatever your processing plan is best practice. I think the question that's come up for a lot of people is more around the worker safety and person-to-person transmission. And there, I think I have seen different recommendations, but ranging anywhere from trying to keep a minimum of 6 feet of distance between anyone at any time. And of course, the strong emphasis on not having anyone come to work sick. But what I'm hearing, so that's what I'll share out right now. But what I am hearing loud and clear is that some more specific guidance oriented to farm businesses and direct to consumer sales would be really helpful. So I'm taking that away from this call, and we'll try to see what we can do to get that out.
Thank you. That would be really great. It sounds like everyone on this call would appreciate those resources. I want to let Beth speak quickly to food safety as well.
Beth, if you're talking, you're muted.
Oh, we'll get the tech folks to unmute Beth. And I think Ari, if you had another question to jump on, that would be great.
Sure.
There we go. I'm unmuted now. Sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to add that our facility is GAP certified, and we've done quite a lot of work with our farmers around best practices around food safety. So I have some resources I can share. I know USDA also has a lot of resources around that, but the main things are just really looking at good record keeping, so that if there is any issue, it can be traced back to a specific person. So you should be recording who is harvesting what, and how much, and where that product is going. Having good traceability means that we can track down problems faster. Washing hands very frequently, you should be doing anyway, I hope. But just making an extra effort to wash hands. And then we are definitely trying to encourage social distancing for our employees. So the whole team is working remotely except for critical delivery staff. And we're disinfecting the trucks in between drivers using them so that we're minimizing cross-contamination. So just, and then making sure that people stay home if they're feeling unwell as well. And we're requiring all our employees to have 72 hours symptom-free before they return to work. So those are just some of the things we're doing to address it.
Thank you. Those are great, tangible things to apply. We also have one more question for you, Beth, before you mute again. Since you have some experience with food hubs, folks wanted to know if there are ways that you suggest quickly moving to build online markets or possibly even food hubs.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of different software platforms out there that kind of help with the sales platform part of this, which is pretty essential. We are in the process right now. We were hoping to do it the slow time of year, but turns out doing it at the slowest possible time of year. We're transitioning to a new software program. So we're using Local Food Marketplace. I know that's what Puget Sound Food Hub also uses. We use Farmigo to manage our LINC box subscription. So those are two really, really critical resources for just orchestrating all the logistics. But I'm happy to talk to anybody individually too if they have more questions.
Thank you so much, Beth. I think we had one last question directed at Jennifer. Jennifer, we're wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the best way we could advocate for farmers markets to reopen. And that could be on the individual level, farmers collectively. What do you think will work? Do we still have Jennifer on the call?
Okay, sorry, slow mouse. You know, in terms of what I think will work, I don't know if I can answer that because we're in a really changing situation. And as much as we want to reopen as quickly as possible, we have to do that as safely as possible. So I'll address the advocacy in one minute, but I think when we reopen, that visible public safety plan has to be in place to our shoppers, and we have to be prepared as a whole community to implement that. And so we're kind of working on that from the inside out right now as the situation and public health guidance changes. We do need the proper permits and public health guidance in place. And so those are pretty clear calls to action for the city to help us work through those so that when we open, we are ready and prepared. As far as how best to advocate, we're committed to this public sign-on letter, which is being drafted right now. It is really Seattle-centric, but I also know that since we play a large role for direct-to-consumer farms who sell all over the state, it does have a ripple effect. So I think what people can watch for is that sign-on letter. And then we haven't yet identified if we'll channel a way for people to write, you know, their own statement about what impact are farmers, is COVID having on farmers, and how do we fit into both the emergency funding landscape and the importance of reopening farmers markets when everyone is prepared. So I think that's the strongest answer I have right now, but we'll continue on this path of helping to channel everyone's voice. I definitely think that we're stronger together, and we need to be focused in our messages to a pretty overwhelmed and taxed set of public agencies in this crisis right now. So we'll do our part to help.
Thank you so much. I think everyone is anxiously awaiting more ways to participate in that. We are getting close to our time, so I think we're going to shift to close.
And I want to make a note that there's a lot of great resources being shared in this chat, from like future webinars about CSAs to documents about food safety, and we're going to do our very best to get those out to you all soon so that if they're time sensitive, hopefully you've made a note of them as well, but if they're time sensitive, we can share them with you.
Thanks, Emma. All right, so I'm going to close us out. First by just thanking all of you. Thank you to all of our panelists and to the enormous show out that we've seen of attendance today. Your time and attention is what's going to get us through this moment. And so it's really lovely to be kind of in focus and in conversation with you all. One thing I want to just bookmark for the group is we've definitely, kind of already been talking and have identified several large topics that have emerged out of farmer discussion. And so we're hoping to figure out how to follow up with either additional resources, maybe future webinars, still very much planning it. But some of those topics are going to be, farmer mutual aid. Is there an opportunity to create a fund or a fundraiser? I think, as Jennifer mentioned, the Seattle Neighborhood Farmers Market has a similar aid fund or relief fund for farmers. We're also thinking about doing some deep dives into food safety best practices, financial resources and emergency funding available for producers, farmer advocacy in the food system, exploring new and alternative sales and market channels. And in that kind of cluster, there have been so much interest expressed in thinking towards what does cash flow look like for developing a delivery CSA model? What are regulations and licensing? Things that farmers need to be thinking about as we try to move towards increased mobility. And then also emergency policy and regulations change. Another thing on our radar is potentially an organizer skill share for bringing a rapid response session like this to your community, along with other things too. So we hope that you're able to leave this session with some new perspective on the present moment and what's on the horizon for agriculture and food systems in the pandemic. One thing, if you'd like to throw in the chat what you're kind of walking away with from this session in our last 5 minutes of holding some open Zoom space, feel free to throw those in there. We'll definitely take a look and try to lift up some of the feedback that you're giving us in our organizing. Our hope is that we'll be following up within a week with the recordings from this session, as well as a resource list that we're compiling from various sources. So as Emma said, we'll certainly try to push time-sensitive resources out your way, and the way that we'll be in touch is through the email that you put into the registration form. Once those recordings go out, feel free to share widely if you know farmers in your community who didn't make it to this, who you think could get some information. Feel free to send those recordings forward. At this point, we just want to wish you, a good season ahead for what it's worth, and to take care of yourselves. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for hosting.
Right. Thank you.